All right, we're going to factor this trinomial. It's not such a simple example because the quadratic term, which is this negative 2x squared, because the squared term is called a quadratic term, the number in front there, that's a negative 2, so that makes it a little more difficult to factor. And so we always try to keep that positive if we can in the front. And so we use a fact where we know that negative 1 times negative 1 equals a positive 1. So if you multiply that whole thing by two negative 1s, you don't change it at all. So let's just do that. So we'd have a negative 1 times a negative 1, parenthesis, negative 2x squared minus 11x minus 15. All right, so what happens here is we already know that this piece right here is positive 1. But we'll go ahead and take this piece, this second part of it, that second negative 1, and distribute it through the whole problem using the distribution property. So we'd have negative 1 times 2x squared plus 11x plus 15. Okay, so we're just going to factor, let me extend this a little bit, we're just going to factor this part right here. And this will be a pretty easy one to factor. Now, my method for factoring is I use kind of a generic, what each of the quadratic, this is the quadratic form or quadratic equation in the different forms. This is where, both of them are positive. You could have a negative and a positive. You could have a positive and a negative. You could have a negative and a negative. And so there's each of those situations has a different factoring. You're going to fill in numbers in the front and the back. If they're both positive, you're going to have some number plus some number times some number plus some number. Or if it's a negative positive, you're going to have some number minus some number and some number minus another number. You're going to fill in the blanks there. If it's plus minus or minus minus, it's the same. It's either a minus plus or a plus minus. Now we don't have that here, and I'm not going to go into detail with those. You could probably pick those up at some other videos or ask me a question, and I'll try and make a video for you when I get time. But notice this one is a plus plus now because we switched all the signs. So this factors, so don't want to lose that negative 1, but this factors into a plus plus in the middle. And then your front term, we're going to fill in this blank and this blank with the front term, which is this 2x squared. And we're going to fill in the 15 back here in the back. So your possibilities for 15 are, you could either have 15 times 1 or you could have 3 times 5. Either of those give you 15. And so I'm going to give you the wrong one just to show you what happens if it's wrong. I know 15 and 1 doesn't work. Let me go back just a little bit. So I'm going to put a 15 here and a 1 here. And then 2x squared, that's what goes in the front. I'll do that in red so it's a little easier to see. And the only possibilities for 2x squared are 2x times x. So that one's kind of nice. Those have to go in the front there. Now if you remember distribution, you remember you could go 2x times x, 2x times 1, 15 times x, 15 times 1. If you don't know that, you really shouldn't even be watching this video. You need to practice that. But if you check that, you'd have 2x squared plus 2x plus 15x plus 15. Well, if you check these middle two terms, this checks and this checks. If you go back to our original, you'd have, there's the 2x and there's the 15, 2x squared and there's the 15. But 15x plus 2x is 17x, not 11x. So we need that middle term to check out and get 11x. And so when I check these, you don't have to check the first and the last. You just have to check the middle. And so let me just go back to that and show you kind of the trick I do, because we know since we broke it down that these front ones are going to work. And we know 15 times 1 is going to work, and that was a plus. But what we don't know is the middle two and the outside two. It kind of makes a smiley face. And so the middle two, notice 15 times x is 15x. And the outside 2 is 2x. Well, that's 17x. Well, we need 11x. So we know the 15. You could rearrange it, but it's I'll just do that just to show you that it's not going to work, even if you rearrange the 15 and the 1. Again, don't forget your negative 1. So it's 2x. Let's rearrange it, put the 1 here, and then computer's running a little slow tonight, and put the 15 here. So we still got 2x, and x is like 2x squared, and 1 and 15 is 15. But if you check your middle 2 and your outside 2, now you've got 1x and 30x, and that is 31x. And so we're even further away than we were before. So let's try the 2 or the 15. Let's try a different number for 15 and 1. So if you try something different for 15 and 1, instead of 15, we're just going to do 5 and 3. So we'll leave the 2x and x the same. We'll leave the plus plus in the same. But we'll go 5 and 3. Now, notice if you check this, I got lucky and put them in the right order. This is 5x, and this is 6x. And together, that's 11x. That's what we needed. So here is the completely factored version of that. Typically, we don't like a negative 1. Sorry, I went a little too far. We don't like a negative 1 there, so we'd write it as negative parenthesis 2x plus 5, and then x plus 3. You know, had you put the 3, had you had these switched around, I mean, this is your answer, your final answer simplified. But had you put the 3 here and the 5 here, that wouldn't have worked. You'd had 10 and 3, which is 13x. So you'd had to rearrange them. So that's a factoring problem that's not quite so easy as what you generally see. You know, if you still have questions, post me a problem, ask me a question. I'd be glad to do another one. So hope this helps. See you next time.